Hi, I'm John DeBenedett, and this is my very first time making a presentation about honeybees in front of beekeepers. And I thought about what I was going to do and how I was going to set it up. And I said, instead of doing a PowerPoint, we're going to do show and tell. And maybe you were of a certain age when you were in school and you had show and tell. Does anybody do show and tell, or am I talking like nobody knows what I'm talking about? Everybody has show and tell, right? Okay, so that's what we're going to try and do tonight. I'm going to start off by saying Landy is a very, very smart person. Okay? All right. She contacted me and said, would you be willing to do this? And I said, of course I would. And then only when I looked at the calendar, I said, she wants me to make some concoctions for the holiday party. That's what she really wants. So that's what we have. So all the concoctions, the different things I've made today, this afternoon, I'm going to discuss at some level this evening. Okay. How did Landy find out about me doing all this crazy nonsense? Besides her crystal ball, myself and other members are with Eastern Apicultural Society, EAS. And several years ago, before the pandemic, I was in Greenville, and like all the EAS folks, does everybody know EAS, or should I give like a 2-minute background? Okay. They have people that are beyond meticulous for the honey shows. And they have people making gadgets and people making frames of honey and beautiful, just incredible stuff. And you sort of go further back, they have pictures, and then they have like cooking with honey. I said, oh, I'm pretty good at that. So I go, drop off. So I get up, I make a no-knead honey whole wheat bread, which we have tonight, 2 different versions. And I make it, I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I degas, I do the second proof, I put it into my stoneware, I get it down there, I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I drop off the honey and I drop off the honey whole wheat bread. And they have a list of who's won, who hasn't won. So they allow you into the room where they have all these different contestants, exhibits. And so I'm looking at my honey and it's way in the back, like the next county over. I said, okay, that didn't do too well. And then I go look at other things, and finally, towards the way back, there's my bread. So this is my first show and tell item. So this is the ribbon for second place at EAS. Yes. So what happened was, I come out, and New Jersey is really amazing. They have 20, 30 people go to these EAS conferences every year. And it was quite well represented in Kentucky. So I come out, I have a grin about 3 miles long, and I'm like, yeah. And somebody says, did you win the honey? No. So I do one of these. I'm like Winston Churchill with victory, Richard Nixon. No. So Landy, or maybe it's John Gott, says, what are you so happy about? Second place. And people are like, you got a ribbon? Oh yeah. But I can't pick it up till later on that day. Oh, okay. So that night we have a banquet, and most of the bread is only they took samples, so I bring it to our table for New Jersey people. We spread it out, and Justin says, someday if you ever go for Master Beekeeper, talk to Deb Delaney, talk to Landy, get rid of some of this bread. So they were all quite happy with it. So anyway, that is going to be one of the topics we're going to talk about bread. Yeah, sometimes he says, you might need that half a point. You might. Maybe you don't. I'm a New Jersey boy. I was born in Montclair, raised in Clifton. I lived with my wife, Victoria, in West Caldwell. When I was growing up, my parents were both school teachers, and Mom and Dad had 2 different jobs each. So part of it, as I'm a 7, 8-year-old youngster, helped Mom take things from the refrigerator, put it in the oven, start the grill for Dad. And as time went by, I did more and more around the house. And I liked it. And Mom and Dad were pretty conventional, box of brownies, box of this, pretty hot dogs and hamburgers. And I did more things on my own. And so that's sort of my background. So I enjoy cooking, I enjoy baking. I did leave the state of New Jersey. I went to Emory in Atlanta, and I have a degree in general biology with a concentration in botany. And at the time, we talk about the native bees. And it was native bees of North Georgia. And it was hummingbirds. It's warmer, more hummingbirds for some pollination for some plants. And you have field mice for some pollination, and our friends Apis mellifera. And I put it all on my back, and that's like 30-some years ago, and I'm complete, archive. And my wife and I rescued a dog. And we would go by Joe Lilino's house. He's a former president, and he has a number of hives. And we would go by the hilltop over in Cedar Grove in Verona, North Cornwall. Is anybody familiar with that? Okay. So we would go right by Joe's house, and he would always say, "You got to beware with the bees. You got to be there with the bees." I see this crazy man with the suit and all this nonsense. And finally, we decided, yeah, let's check it out. So we took the short course here with Landy, Joe Trimel, Tim Schuler was here. So that was wonderful.
What year was that?
This will be my 9th year in February. So, so that's that. Before I went into beekeeping, one of my other money pit hobbies was scuba diving. And when you go to EAS, you go to a nice hotel in the United States, you come into the lobby and you see these big, beautiful urns of like iced water or lemonade, maybe iced tea. So something for the adults and the kids to all drink. And I'm diving in Egypt. I'm diving the Red Sea. Wonderful people, wonderful underwater life. And you come into the hotel, a nice hotel, and they have this thing called cock-a-day. What the heck is cock-a-day? This is cock-a-day. This is an Arabic, what it is, and you say, okay, I still don't know what it is. It is red hibiscus flowers that are dried, and they make it into a tea. So what I did tonight, you may see this in ShopRite or some other place and say, oh, okay, I don't know if I want to go to Patterson for the cock-a-day, but it's a lot cheaper in Patterson. And so I said to the people there, I said, how do you make this stuff? And they gave me a recipe, and so it was metric, so I converted to English. And if you want, I can give you the recipe. You can look at them online. They're all about the same. And the idea is boiling water, adding 10 cups of water, a cup of this cock-a-day, boil it, let it steep for 20 minutes, half hour. Strain it. If you're just doing a general group of people, you add sugar. But you're not just general people, you're part of my club. So one of the answers was use honey. So I switched out sugar for honey, and every now and then I use honey. So I sometimes have crystallized honey. I know you may have that. To me, hot boiling tea in that bottom of that jar, you get rid of all that. Two birds with one stone. So what I did was, it's a reddish color. It looks like wine. It's not wine. There's no alcohol in there. I made 2 containers of it from one batch today of cock-a-day. If you want to take a sample, you're more than welcome. Yeah, you'd swear it was a Cabernet, but it's not a Cabernet.
I'll take the whole thing home with me. I love hibiscus.
Well, yeah, so, there's 2 jars. You come on up, or you want to take the jar there, feel free. Yeah, so they've been working on the cock-a-day a little bit, so that's good. And I learned to drink it cold and sweetened, but you can have it unsweetened cold, you can have it hot. It's tea. It's gore.
Which one has honey, which one has sugar?
All the cock-a-day has honey. There's no sugar in that today.
Okay.
So that's the first one. What's that?
How do you spell?
Okay, here it is in Arabic. No, that's not right. It is, I want to say it was like K-A-K-A-D-A-H-A or something, cock-a-day. And some of my co-workers on one of my part-time jobs are of the Arabic descent, so they get me all the cock-a-day I want from Patterson. So that's my first recipe. I got the second recipe I just want to talk about very briefly. People ask, is that cornbread? No, that's a honey cake. And the original recipe that I got from my wife's side of the family was for a 9-inch pan. of cake. And I really was hoping there would be more folks here tonight, so I went and actually doubled the recipe. And that causes the top of the cake to get a little more caramelized than I'd want. But that is a recipe wherein you add flour. There's no sugar. So you go, and when you do the conversion, you find for a 9-inch pie size, cake pan, you're talking 3/4 of a pound of honey. So it's like, ooh, that's a little painful. But it's a simple answer: mixing butter, mixing the honey, adding eggs, flour, salt, some baking soda, and there is some almond extract. There's a little alcohol in there, not too much. And so that's the next recipe. Okay. So hopefully, so you like the cock-a-day? All right. This is the easy stuff to get a hold of. This is more challenging.
Red Singer.
What's that?
Red Singer.
Well, this is actually the hibiscus, the red, and
Seasonings, Red Zinger tea
okay.
is almost all hibiscus.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. Like I said, they provide this to me like once a month. I get a fresh thing of cock-a-day for about $2.50, $3. So that works for me. I beg your pardon?
How much honey did you sweeten it with cock-a-day?
With the cock-a-day, I used 1 cup of honey, which is about 12 ounces, to sweeten 10 cups of boiling water and 1 cup of the buds. What's that?
1 cup of honey to 10 cups of the
Boiling water, yeah, to the tea, yeah. And that's the recipe I got. And you might say, geez, this is a little too sweet, or maybe it's not sweet enough. So that's up to you. Okay, great. My next show and tell. This is a good book. The Fresh Honey Cookbook. All kinds of good stuff in here. And this book is a good book. I have a number of cast iron pieces, and what I decided to do was make my own concoction creation. And I got chicken thighs. I browned them in the cast iron, both sides. And then because you've already pre-cooked them, you don't have to cook them quite as long in the oven. And I knew that the chicken was going to sit out for a while, so I added more chicken broth than the recipe calls for, and added some spices and honey and lemon. And but I did not marinate it. I put it in during the cooking process. I like it. It's not too sweet. Some folks have a sweet tooth, want to add a little more honey. Once again, I can give you that recipe if you want. And if you don't, that's fine too. Okay. Last but not least is the bread. Yeah. Victoria and I were in the store and we're looking at whole wheat bread and honey whole wheat bread, and she says, you could probably do better. I said, yeah. So I went online. I get my recipes from newspaper articles. I get them from cookbooks. Mom is always getting Better Home and Garden, sending me magazine clippings. And she said, oh, here's honey. Okay, send it to John. So I have a variety of sources for my recipes. And some of these concoctions, I just say, oh, this is sort of a good idea. And sometimes it's not. And I'm online, and I'm looking for honey whole wheat bread, and I find about 10,000 different entries. It's beyond belief. And so I start going through one after the other and start to say, okay, I sort of got this. And I stumble on YouTube a fellow, Artisan Bread with Steve. And Steve is an older gentleman, and he talks to you about the bread process. And he's big on the idea of there's no kneading of the bread. You're not there beating yourself up. You're not using a bread machine. He's using a standard 3-cup recipe. And what he does is, and some other ones, he adds some yeast to the whole mixture. And he tells you what every part is. You have your dry components, you have your wet components. And you add your yeast, put it in a bowl, some type of vessel, and cover it with saran wrap. Now, we're going into the winter, so you say, okay, what do we do? Put it in the oven. Leave the oven light on. It's about 80-ish degrees. It's fine. It's summertime. Leave it on the windowsill. And let it sit for anywhere from 8 to like a day. And you can be like me, experiment. Let's see how it is after 3 days. You don't know what it's like after 3 days. 8 to 24 hours, you let it sit. It'll double, triple in size, degas, and he shows you how to degas it. And he shows you, here's a couple ways to move the dough around. For an example with tonight, I used two 2-quart pans. Sprayed them with a little Pam. And so once when they're all done growing, I degassed them, put them in there. Put them back on the sill with the sun and the heat. Put a cloth on top to keep the dust out. They grew right back. And one recipe was the oblong one was the one I used at EAS. And that is a stoneware cooker, and it's seasoned so it doesn't stick. And then it has a top that fits on. The purpose of that is the bread cooks at about 450 degrees. And the moisture comes out, but it doesn't have any place to go. So when you take the top off after about 30 minutes, you say, boy, that crust is very soft. If that's to your liking, that's great. What he recommends, a lot of other people recommend, is to take that cover off and let it sit in the oven for another 3, 4, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. The longer it sits, the more crusty the bread gets. It's up to you how crusty you want it. The other one is made in a cast iron pan that's a little bit more circular. That had no lid, so you can see what the difference is. So that was there for the whole 30 minutes without. So you might like one more than the other. That's up to you. One of the things with that recipe is, and I have to give credit where credit's due, Joe Trimel is a wonderful cook. He does canning. I do some canning. We make breads. We do a lot of things that are very similar. And so Joe says to me, and I tell him about the recipe, and he goes, yeah, that's good. Do yourself a favor. I said, yeah, add more honey. Okay, how much? The recipe calls for 1 tablespoon. Add 2, add 3, add 4, add 5. Try it. Write down what you did. He says, you'll find 5 is too sweet unless you have kids. They go, oh yeah, this is great. He says, 2 might not be enough. The sweet spot, pun intended, is about 3 tablespoons. So you say, the recipe calls for 1. Add 2 more. What he also said is, you're measuring out the olive oil. So yeah. And honey's sticky. Yeah, no kidding, Joe. He says, use your olive oil first. Put that in. Now put the honey in. Because the tablespoon already has a coat of oil. Slips right in, boom, goes right out. Boom, 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 boom. Great. You put extra liquid in the recipe. The recipe actually calls for a tablespoon of sugar, plain table sugar. Well, it's dry. You've added more liquid. You got to take liquid out. Or be prepared that the recipe will take longer to cook. So write your notes down and see what works for you. I personally, for every 2 tablespoons of honey that you add, it's equivalent to about 1 ounce of water. So when the recipe calls for, I want to say like 13 ounces of water, drop it down to 12, 11 and a half. And that way all your bake times and everything seem to work out real good. That's it. I want to keep it short and sweet. Did anybody have any questions? Or, oh yes, okay.
Did I hear you correctly that you said you didn't need the bread?
Correct.
You mix the ingredients.
Yeah.
And let it sit in a warm place.
Yeah.
And you don't need it.
No. So for what he does is, this fellow Steve does is, the honey whole wheat, I'm going off, I don't have the recipe right in front of me. It's like 1.5 cups of bread flour, which is higher in gluten than all-purpose flour. So this causes the bread to rise up a little bit. And he said, but you need whole wheat. That's really dense. So if you use just whole wheat bread, flour, whoa, that's some heavy stuff. Mix it together. So now you have 1.5, 1.5, that's your 3-cup recipe. You're going to add, I think it's 1/4 teaspoon or 1/2 teaspoon of bread machine yeast, baker's yeast, whatever. You're going to add, mix that all together. You're also going to add some salt. I want to say it's like 1/2 teaspoon. Salt. maybe it's 1 teaspoon. I'm going off the top of my head. And mix all that dry together, so it's all with a whisk. And then you add your olive oil, about a tablespoon. Then you add your honey. So the yeast is going to eat that honey as opposed to sugar. And you just stir it around. And it will all start to incorporate. Several minutes, it's not long. You don't need a machine. You really need a spatula that has a plastic handle, because wood, it just gets nasty and you can't sanitize it. So plastic is easier. And you just do a stirring process. Cover it with some saran wrap and put it in the oven. That's it. And so when you come back, and I made that, I made it at 10 o'clock last night, and I was baking it 5 o'clock this afternoon. So it had doubled, tripled in size, so I degassed it.
What do you mean by degassing?
You punch it down.
You punch it down. So what he does is, and I do, is just get your spatula and just move it around, and you just hear all the gas, and it goes right down. Then,
but at this point, it's a really sticky mash, right?
It's not as sticky as you think.
No?
Put some flour on a mat, flour your hands, take this bread out. I have, Joe Trimel said, get one of these, it's a little baker's type tool. So basically it's a hard plastic type spatula. So you can really get in, scoop out everything, pat it down, use the tool, put it into a ball. This whole process is maybe 2 or 3 minutes. It's not long. And then that's when I talked about putting it into a pot that has some PAM on it, so it will not adhere. Let it grow again, but do it second proof. Then put the pan or the stoneware in the oven, get it hot, get it up to temperature, about 450 degrees. Turn it over, get yourself if you want. The one bread I used one pattern, the other bread I used a different pattern, make a couple cuts, put it in, whether you cover or uncover, and you're done. So there is no kneading. There is no kneading. Saves you a lot of time. If you want to knead it, that's fine, but the whole idea is you don't have to. He always tells you, let Mother Nature do it. You got better things to do. So anyway, that's it. So yeah, it's Artisan Bread with Steve. If you're interested, it's very straightforward. He goes step by step. The only time he really speeds up the film is when it's, letting the oven come up to temperature. He gets all done with the mixture. Now you come back in 24 hours. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, fine. But other than that, you see him measuring everything out. It's very straightforward. Very straightforward. Anybody else have any good questions? Thoughts, comments, deeds? Oh my gosh.
How long for the second proof?
Anywhere from 1.5 to 2 hours. Yeah. So when an hour goes by, hour and 15 minutes, half hour, hour and a half, hour 20, start the oven, turn it on. Yeah.
By the way, John, I discovered the stand mixer as a life changer.
The what's that?
The stand mixer.
Oh, I have one of those too. Oh yeah. Yeah, I got
use that all the time. I know you said get a plastic spoon.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
I discovered the stand mixer. How did I go without this for so long in my life?
Oh, I have a beautiful KitchenAid, but it's heavy. And sometimes you say that plastic spatula, I'm going to be done in about 4 minutes. It takes me 4 minutes just to get the thing from the basement. Anyway.
The stoneware container that you made the bread in,
Yes.
is that like a tandoori oven type thing?
I got it at King Arthur's. I get a lot of recipes from King Arthur's. Great site. And so they sell this stoneware that's made in Ohio. So it is first part is a dish, maybe 2 inches high, maybe 9-10 inches across. And it's stone. So they recommend you season it with flaxseed oil. So I did it, 3-4 times. So now it has a very...
Pizza stone?
Yeah. But they recommend you season it. So now it has a very dark panetta and nothing sticks on it. I mean, when I first started using it, I said, let me use parchment paper just in case, because I don't want to clean this mess up. No, nothing sticks to that.
And it's covered.
Yeah, and then the top portion I did not season. It's a big dome, and I was going to bring it today, but it was still hot today. You know, it's stoneware. I said, this is not a good idea. I should probably take a picture and send it to everybody. But they sell it at King Arthur's. I want to say it was on promotion. It was like $60. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't expensive, and it makes a nice loaf of bread. So that's that.
You think you could use a tandoori oven?
I don't have one. I don't know. Maybe. I really don't know. I mean, I have a standard
That's
G.
glazed on the inside.
Yeah,
That's stoneware, but it's clay.
yeah,
You know, but it's-
yeah. One of his I hope nobody goes to Ithaca because you know this is some of my good recipes. He has a recipe for rosemary bread, and so instead of using sugar, I've used honey with that. And Joe made the comment to me. He says, it seems like you get an extra day or two shelf life. Not sure why. Maybe because the extra liquid. Maybe it's the antimicrobial part of honey, even though it's awful hot. I don't think much survives. But it always seems to last another day, too. But in one of the rosemary, he has a clay baker. And he uses parchment paper. He doesn't have it seasoned. And so it's the same thing as mine, except it's smaller rolls as opposed to a bigger mass of bread, of dough. So, and that's it.
I found in baking, baking with honey, your stuff, whatever you make is more moist
Yeah,
than if you were using sugar.
yeah,
And it does last longer.
yeah,
Lasts a little bit longer.
yeah.
more
Another day or
moist.
two, yeah.
Honey's just-
Yes, sir. Oh, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
John, if you share some of that information with me, I'll put it in the next newsletter.
Absolutely, be happy to do it.
The books and
Sure.
where the recipes come from, et cetera.
Yeah, be happy to do it.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
The recipe for the honey cake in there, I love it.
The what's that?
My maid doesn't love it, but I love it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm glad you like that. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't because of. Yeah, what I'll do with the newsletter, I'll give you the 1 9-inch pie pan version. It doesn't caramelize as much as the bigger one. I doubled the recipe to make a bigger pan for everybody because I thought there'd be a few more people here. So hopefully everybody takes it home.
That's okay, I'm not for 4 people.
Okay, good. That's what I want.
Hey, you know what? I just thought of one of my favorite honey recipes.
Okay.
So carrots, honey glazed carrots are wonderful for the holidays.
Yeah.
And I don't go get those baby carrots. I get the
The
peeled.
real ones.
And I slice them at an angle, and I put them in my roasting pan with butter rather than olive oil.
Okay.
A little melted butter and some honey. And it caramelizes. The honey caramelizes during the cooking. So 450 degrees, about 15 minutes. I'll add a little bit of dried dill.
Okay.
I prefer the dried to fresh in this particular one, and salt and pepper, and it's really delicious. It'll get like it's just so good. So
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
honey glazed carrots.
And by the way, just to add to the whole recipe thing, I brought in the celery, and that was a bit of a, I'll confess all my sins right in front of everybody.
I'm here for you. Open your heart. Open your heart. It's okay. I'm non-judgmental.
I was seized with the idea to make halva, honey halva, which is tahini, sesame paste, and honey, and add toasted almonds to it, and it never set. So I said, okay, so now I have honey tahini butter with toasted almonds. And the problem is that once you take it out of the refrigerator, it begins to break down, which is why it turns into the soupy mess that it is. So this is a learning experience not only for me, but everybody I tell this to. And but it actually makes a very tasty butter, and you can keep it in your jar and it lasts forever. There's nothing perishable in that until the oil goes away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's butter.
You go online and get these recipes, and I still haven't figured out what I did wrong, and it's way too, too much quantity to try again anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah, what I do is I take a piece, this is one of my books here, and I write down, here's my recipe for the honey cake, and makes 1 9-inch round, but you can double it, and you can almond extract, you can use vanilla, sour cream, or yogurt, and I use whole milk yogurt. It's more fatty, it's good for you. It's not good for you, but it's really all right. Yeah, right. You got, it's either illegal, immoral, or fattening. So you pick your choice, and yeah, sometimes. So then what I do is these have been, I incorporated the notes. I try and scan them. So I have it on the computer. And if I really like it, I'll say, okay, let me rekey the darn thing in. But if you just scan it, now you have it. It might not be pretty, and you got all the oil stains, but you have it, Somebody says, where the heck is that recipe again? It's on, you can put it on the computer. So that's sort of a good thing to do. Because unfortunately, this grows legs. It walks away sometimes. I always seem to catch it, though. But I do not use a laptop or a tablet or anything like that in the kitchen, because between the grease and the flour and the butter and all the other junk that's going around, no, I'd rather have a piece of paper, because worst that happens is I get a new piece of paper. Worst that happens is I get a new notebook. So anyway, well, I hope everybody enjoyed it, and I will thank you, and I please grab some of those items.